and welcome to the IHRB.com YouTube channel, back with another episode of Jump to It. Unfortunately, Vincent Finnegan is away for a couple of weeks, but I'll be hosting this week's show, and we're joined by Paddy Flood and Johnny Ward this week. But just before we go into the show, just give a quick mention to a charity auction in aid of a great cause happening this weekend at the Hotel Manila. It's in aid of the Killusty Pony Show and the Irish Injured Jockeys Fund. There'll be a selection of original paintings of characters from the racing world. I had a quick look at a few of the paintings at the races in Tipperary yesterday, and there's some great pieces up for auction. As I said, in aid of a good cause. It's on 8 o'clock this Saturday night in the Hotel Manila. Tickets are €25. There'll be drinks and refreshments there. So if you're around the area, make sure to call in and support a great cause, like I said. But we'll go into the show now, and joined by Johnny and Paddy. Like I said, Johnny, you're in Killarney. I think you're on Racing TV duty today.
I am, yeah. Fabulous Killarney. Vinny's obviously away on an IHRB sponsored junket somewhere. But Paddy, you had a few winners around here, did you?
I had a few winners in Killarney. Johnny had, I think I was telling you off air there, I had a really good time in Kerry. It must be something in the air. I rode my first winner in Tralee many moons ago, a horse called Ballygown Beauty. But there's a good story with that, Johnny, that now, allegedly, he was a horse that I won 2 hurdle races on in Dingle in pony racing. At the time, I was obviously only 15, didn't know anything about it.
Allegedly.
But, allegedly, we'll just put that out there. So, allegedly, so it was a good baptism of fire. I remember being brought into the IHRB at 16 and interrogated, and sure, listen, I think they had boot polish or something on one of his legs or one of his heads or something. But the great old Tommy Walker, the Bog Road, sure, he was a good horse. He won 3 or 4 on the track, but I think he might have been a graded horse for Charles Burns in the day. But I didn't know any of that when I was a young lad. It was just Kieran Egan got me to riding the horse, and sure, it was great crack. But first winner take it off me, and about a month's interrogation in the IHRB or Turf Club at the time was a fair way to start your career.
Yeah, I was just looking at Petrolhead today running, Emma, because there's a bit of a D in the horse's form. But just looking up, Ballygown Beauty was disqualified from 32 races. So Petrolhead is a long way to go.
You'd have
allegedly, Johnny.
Allegedly. But a bit further away from Dingle, we'll crack into the action over the weekend. Obviously, a brilliant weekend in Longchamp and a great weekend for the Irish runners over there. A great Joseph O'Brien kicked us off, I suppose, with a Group 2 winner on the Saturday. Then Aidan went on and had a double on Sunday. Went very, very close in the Arc. Jack Davison had a great run in the Abbey with She's Quality. Jesse obviously won the Opera. So great weekend for Irish runners over there. I suppose to start off with the big race of the day, the Arc. I thought it was a cracking renewal. I thought Mini Hawk had it the whole way up, and they pulled well clear of the second as well, which normally shows there might have been 2 fairly top quality horses at the front end. Paddy, what did you make of this year's Arc?
I thought it was as good an Arc as I've ever seen, Emma. I thought it was a brilliant race. Look, you're going to have people saying that if Ryan was on Mini Hawk, she'd have won. I don't know. She got it so easy in the run. She found it so easy. I was very surprised how well she travelled. Christoph was able to put her into any position he wanted. He'd Wayne outside him, minding him, protecting his ground. And she lobbed to the front on the bridle. In an Arc, you're not going to take a pull there when you go that easy to the front and disappoint your horse and wait for something. You're going to try and, take that advantage that you've had in the run. I think Christoph did everything he could have to win. I think he brought Mikel Barcelona across the track. He waited. He might have even got a little bump off Dars, and she just couldn't beat him. I think the winner is an exceptionally good horse. Beautiful looking horse, beautiful pedigree. A strong cold, and I'd say she just got beat by a superstar, and she lost nothing in the feet. Now she's a better filly than I thought she was.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Now I was a fan of her going into it, but to put a performance like that, and like you said, interesting. The winner, I don't think he was raced until March or April of this year, which it's some progression to go from being.
They ran him over ran him over, a mile and two the last day, and kind of they looked like they minded him. There was gaps there for him to go and win races, and they didn't take him. They pulled him out, let him hit the line strong. Another half furlong, he wins without even getting a tap behind the saddle. So it was a really good training performance, and Jesus, isn't he a trainer on the up,
Yeah, I was just about to say it's another notch in the belt of Francis Graffard. Johnny, he looks like he's going to be a formidable force in French racing for a long time to come now.
Yeah, and it was a real French story as well, Darius, because the dam, it's really like a kind of pedigree, but the dam has produced nearly everything she's produced, just looking today, has been black type. And this horse, just as Paddy says, very much trained. First try at 1.5 miles in the Arc, a horse who didn't run until April, and 2 3-year-olds battling it out. Minnie Hawk was my idea of the horse for the Arc for a long time, to be honest. I loved the way she was going about her business against the fillies, but I honestly thought the ground was gone for her, because I was just reading from the comments that I think Ryan Moore said about her that Whirl was more an easy ground horse and she wasn't. Like sometimes I find French going descriptions a bit baffling, because like when I'm in France it never seems to rain, but they seem to have very soft ground a lot, so it doesn't really add up to me. So I don't know exactly what the ground was, but kind of like Paddy, I've come around to the idea that the best horse won in the day, because the only thing I will say about Minnie Hawk is that I think Mikel Barcelona, he probably had a fair idea. Sometimes I think it'd be better off if jockeys knew like what the market was beforehand, what's the main danger according to the market, because the market's very accurate. The market here was very, very strong in Minnie Hawk, but she was favourite going into the weekend, and maybe Mikel thought, I'm going to track her, and she kind of gave him a dead aim into the straight. She took it up about 300 metres out, and I for a horse who does idle a bit in front, I do feel that it worked for Mikel, that he was basically able to come beside her and just go with that kind of run about 50 yards out, and she wasn't able to kind of go upside him or come from behind to tackle him. So if the race were run tomorrow, I'm not entirely sure she'd finish second again. But having said that, he was sort of only pushed out as well. Like I think it was a shade cozy for the head that he won. But regardless, like if you're Aidan O'Brien, who's never won the race with the 3-year-old filly, to have a horse who, like, she was 5.5 lengths clear of everything else. You take out a 16-1 chance out of the race. Darius has a stone bruise in the morning. He doesn't run. She's one of the most impressive winners of the Arc that we've seen. And in fairness, people might knock the race, but it was probably a pretty solid Arc. Like there were good kind of solid horses. Last year's form was put to the test, and they were all blown out the water apart from Sosi. And for me, Minnie Hawk, I'd love her to stay in training. I'd love her to go to the Breeders' Cup. I feel she still has so much more to offer, and she is, I think she's the first Frankel proper superstar that Aidan O'Brien has, because that was, for a 3-year-old filly to run that race, she did everything but win. I thought it was a brilliant performance from her, and I'm sure it was a strange one for Aidan, because what more can you do? But you were just beaten.
Yeah, I think Christoph.
I think if you're running again. If you run it again, Johnny, and if you run it with the same draw, you'll get the same result. But if you put Dars in stall 1, well, he has to do what Minnie Hawk does. He has to. He's on the speed. She's got everything so easy there. He's not going to take a pull and give away 3 lengths, go back into a bunch and wait for him to go. He's not. It's never going to happen, even in a jumps race. If you get it that easy, look, she kicked. And to be fair to her, she was I don't think you could have. The rain was pelting down at that stage, real heavy shower. She was there long enough in front. And Christoph and Aidan will be saying to themselves, okay, look, if we had a lead into the straight for longer, but she didn't, and there was no way of getting a lead for any longer. The one draw and the easy run throughout dictated when he had to go on her,
Yeah, for sure. And Christoph actually gave a bit of a mention to it in his interview after the race as well. Now, it didn't really sound like he thought he had done anything wrong. And to be honest, I kind of agree with you, Paddy. I'm not sure what else he could have done. Like, it was just kind of more a brilliant ride by Mikel Barcelona on the eventual winner. Like Johnny said, kind of caught him with one swoop. But yeah, I
don't think it was this like on the nod type verdict. Like I thought he won a bit snugly, so that's the key thing for me.
Yeah, I do hope she stays in training next year, though. She's been a filly, like you said, progressed from run to run. Like when she won the Cheshire Oaks at the start of the year, like she wasn't blowing anyone away, but every run she's improved, and you'd imagine there'd be a fair bit left in her now as coming into her 4-year-old campaign as well. She could be one to look forward to. But we'll move on to the rest of the action over the weekend. I suppose, Johnny, was there anything else in Longchamp that particularly impressed you? I was really impressed by Marino or Charlie in the Foray. I thought he was good there, but there was plenty of good performances, I suppose.
Yeah, you mentioned Tennessee Stud. Like it was a great weekend again for Wootton Bassett. It's and he's going to be doing this time and time again posthumously now, kind of showing horses at various distances. Like, you know, you look at Al Rifa and you look at Tennessee Stud, both with Joseph, both effectively staying horses, very, very good staying horses. And then he gets Puerto Rico, who I put Puerto Rico up to be true love at the Curragh. I thought he was a great bet earlier in the season, and he was absolutely beaten out the gate that day. And you look at his form since, like, even though he was beaten twice since, very, very good effort yesterday, really improving with racing. And he's been tried. Like Aidan has definitely asked him serious questions. I'd like to give Shane Foley a mention, because any race you win by a short neck, a short head, and a short head at any level must give you satisfaction. But Shane, who's I don't know, Paddy tell you more, but I think Shane's like an extremely strong rider to win the Prix de l'Opera in the manner and that he did, and for Jessica Harrington, who's just the most inspirational trainer, really, the way that she keeps producing it. This was a Barnavar as well, who's having her 13 starts. That's good going for a 3-year-old who didn't, after her debut, she was beaten 7 races she was beaten, and then she wins 4 out of her last 5, including at the top level as well. And for Shane to edge a verdict like that, I thought was pretty special. And to give a mention as well, as you've already done, Emma, to Jack Davison, who's, I think Jack's developing into a really good trainer. He's just kind of plays his horses well, and he kept She's Quality fresh. It's probably a fairly straightforward horse to train, but that was a hell of an effort to finish third as well. But I actually thought by a long way the Irish performance of the day was Minnie Hawk.
Yeah, she was brilliant. But just kind of touching on the point that Johnny made there, Paddy, I'll ask you, like Shane Foley, I think from the front, he's so dangerous. He did the same thing on Barnavar and then in the Curragh. He kind of just seems to stack them up, and he gets the timings right more often than not, and then he's just so strong in the finish. I thought it was a brilliant ride to land the Group 1 for Jessica Harrington at the weekend as well.
Yeah, I was delighted for them, because they have had a rift of good fillies down through years, and they might have been just lacking this year. Johnny said that filly was beaten 7 times, but I'd heard Shane's interview after that. He'd said all along that he thought she was a really good filly, and she was just starting to mature. And she'll probably stay in training by the sounds of it, that they think there's more improvements come. But Shane's not everyone's cup of tea in a finish with his whip. It can be a little bit awkward, a little bit not saying he looks like Luke Morris ran, but Luke is not everyone's cup of tea either. But they're very effective. They've figured it out. They don't interfere with a horse's balance when they're running. It doesn't look too pretty on the eye, but Shane's whip comes across. It matters if a horse starts to wobble and wander. Then you're actually affecting the stride pattern. But whatever way Shane does it, he's able to get the whip out in front of his face and get a strike into them. And he's able to kind of keep the revs up pushing. Now, I don't think I'd be able to do it. If I tried, I wouldn't be able to do it. But he's perfected it down through the years. And like you said, Emma, Shane's a very confident rider, a very confident guy. Riding horses is not a maths test. It can be very simple if you can keep things mentally stress-free and keep things simple in your own head. But horse racing is quite easy then, but it's pressure and being able to kind of, produce under pressure, and Shane does that time and time again.
Yeah, he was brilliant. Nice to see Jessica Harrington get the Group 1 winner result again. But just before we move on from the arc, I just have to give a quick mention to Diamond Necklace. I thought she was fantastic, and getting that first Group 1 winner from St. Mark's Basilica in his first crop. It's obviously huge for him. But Johnny, we kind of talked about her a bit after Champions Weekend, but she just looked exceptional to me. I don't think Christoph even pulled out the stick. I'm not sure, did he drop it or did he just think he didn't need it? It was hands and heels all the way to the finish, and she could be anything next year. Aidan kind of sounded as if maybe she wasn't as fast maturing as some of his other 2-year-olds, but she got her Group 1 towards the end of the season and looks like a real classic contender for next year.
Yeah, out of it, Dan Silly Mayor as well, like Mini Hawk, which is interesting. And Aidan has made interesting comments about Dan Silly in terms of that edge that he sort of puts in horses. Like for a horse by St. Mark's Basilica, who's obviously a completely unproven stallion, which cost 1.7 million euros as a yearling. So it's obviously a beautiful horse, but she's a half sister to Magic Wand and Chiquita. That pedigree is there, and she's probably versatile with Garden Ground, as we saw yesterday as well, which she's bred for. But to have a horse who started off beating Minerva no less on the 9th of August. That's a really late maturing type, and I think Aidan has shown here that he was probably very patient with her, and that's the way maybe she's, like you've said, she's developed kind of that sort of way. But what trip could she bet? What trip could she get? Chiquita obviously was an Irish Oaks horse. And St. Mark's Basilica, we don't know what he's going to do as a sire in terms of distance. Will he get a lot of horses staying over different distances? But at the moment, to me anyway, she looks all over an Oaks filly for next year. Very, very exciting. A massive boost, I think, for the sire as well. Just so early to get a horse that could be in the could be anything category.
She looks really exciting. Aidan was interviewed afterwards. Kind of sounds like she'll probably start in the Guineas, but like you said, I'd say she'll probably end up being an Oak City down the line. But she's one to look forward to into next year. But we'll move on from the Arc. Another big thing announced during the week, the William Hill Each Way Extra Challenge Series. It sounds like a great initiative brought in by William Hill. It began at the weekend at Gorham Park. I was actually there myself, and we had a runner in one of the race series. Is running from starting the 3rd of October, and it's going for about 7 months into April 26th. It's going to be featuring 50 races, and to kind of put it simply, it's going to be a points-based system. You get points for finishing in the first 7 of these 50 races, and there's a bonus at the end. I think the winning trainer has a 50 grand bonus, whoever accumulates the most points. The winning jockey gets a 10 grand, and the stable staff 10 grand as well. It's going to exclude the top 4 trainers. I think you have to train less than 50 winners in the last 2 seasons, ultimately gets rid of the big 4. They can run in the race, but they can't win the bonus. It sounds like it could be a massive thing for the kind of the grassroots of Irish racing. Paddy, what did you think when you saw it being announced during the week?
Look, Emma, I'm with you. Anything to help the small man is a good idea, because I was just having a quick flick on Twitter last night, and the amount of point-to-point horses gone to big yards is just, it's crazy, and rarely is there one under 250,000 going anywhere that you're hearing of, and anything under the 250 mark has gone to Dan Skelton, or it's gone to John Joe, or it's gone somewhere else, and there's nothing there for the smaller man. Even, back when I was riding, and if you look back, 15, 20 years, the summertime, you had your summer horses. You'd say, great, we'll go to Kilbeggan, we'll go to Clarny, we'll go to here, there and everywhere, and, we'll have a few winners. Now Willie's summer maiden horses that could end up grade 1 horses. There's no easy race anymore. Not that it was easy racing, but you wouldn't have come up against a superstar in the summer. You'd have been coming up against them horses. So fair play. Yeah, 50 grand is a nice pot, not to be sniffed at for anybody. 10 grand for jockeys, the same thing. I was kind of flicking through the rules of it. Is it that the top trainers can actually run in the race, but they don't get points if they win? And are the jockeys excluded, the top 4 or 5, something like that as well?
I don't think the jockeys are restricted, but if a jockey, let's say, rides a winner for Winnie Mullins, they won't get points. They only get points for riding a winner for, let's say, TJ Nagle. It won't be, if you ride a winner for the top 4, you don't get your points. But and that was kind of, I think they've kind of, there's obviously been a lot of thought went into it. It's worded very well, because you're not excluding anyone from running in the race. But, this 50 grand is obviously going to mean an awful lot more to the smaller yards than to the likes of the big 4 trainers. And even the way it's worded for the riders, it might encourage, maybe someone to ride for a smaller yard. Maybe riding.
TJ will be ringing up Paul Town and there for the winter. He will.
Yeah, we'll have Paul in school in there during the week.
Yeah.
I just saw it, they've obviously put an awful lot of thought into it. Like, it's worded very well. Johnny, what were your thoughts when you saw it?
I think, Emma, one thing that strikes me about this is the real support of the Irish Racehorse Traders Association, and Phelim Cunningham has been front and centre of it. And this clearly brings me back to the failed HRI initiative to bring in all those races that essentially excluded the top 4 trainers, which got, I suppose it got a kind of an up and down reaction from the trainers generally, and that was a big talking point for us when we had the podcast that time. Like, I think HRI's, the reason bringing it in was sound, but I suppose there were reasons to oppose it as well, and this kind of finds a nice little gap in the middle, and like 50 grand, like trainers are owed, I know for myself, you don't pay your bills all the time when you have a horse in training, and trainers generally they are often owed a good bit of money from various owners. Often owners leave them very much in the lurch, and training fees are expensive. But like 50 grand is a big incentive. And the one thing I really would take from this is, I want to give William Hill a lot of kudos here, and it's not because of a sponsorship reason. And I was actually talking to. I think I was talking to Phelim Cunningham about this yesterday. Like, if you went on a regular betting site now compared to 20 years ago, right? So if you went on WilliamHill.com or any betting site today, what percentage of bets on the website are horse racing? And it would be absolutely tiny. Like, it's so small racing compared to where it was at, and it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And for me, bookmakers are rapidly losing interest in it. If racing collapsed tomorrow, the Flutter share price would barely be touched, in my view. So for William Hill to actually be saying we're interested in racing and we're trying to do something here, I think from the William Hill perspective, it makes a lot of sense. Their name is going to be all over these races for the next few months. It promotes the Each Way Extra, which is a bookmaker initiative to get people betting and so forth. And I actually don't really see any flaw with this at all. And I would like to give the bookmakers some credit. And we knock bookmakers plenty, but I do feel William Hill is actually helping racing here and showing an interest in racing, because I would reiterate, and I don't think people get this in racing, bookmakers do not give a toss about racing compared to where it was at.
Yeah, look, you have to give them all the credit for this, in fairness, and you kind of touched on it, but like for those smaller trainers, like a lot of them are just surviving. Like, they mightn't even, like, they're taking a tiny wage maybe from their business. Like, so this 50 grand could be huge. And yeah, it'll be kind of exciting to kind of watch it unfold as well. There'll be a leaderboard throughout the season, and we can follow it along. 50 races, I think, up till April this year. So it'll be interesting, and hopefully it's something that can be developed upon further in the future as well. But we'll move on. During the week, the IHRB announced it's currently developing thoroughbred welfare standards as part of this new process. They're inviting members of the public to contribute their view through a survey that's available on the IHRB website. Look, Vincent Finnegan made his thoughts pretty clear in his blog. It's a good read for anyone who maybe haven't had the chance to look into this yet. But basically what the IHRB are doing is they're putting out a survey out there to kind of invite members of the industry as well as members of the public to contribute their views on what should be the basic welfare standards for thoroughbreds. I had a quick flick through it myself, and look, it seems like really basic stuff, to be honest. You're kind of asked to rate how strongly you feel about different regulations and how they're worded, and whether they're realistically to be imposed among racing yards. And like the first few of them, it's like stabling, water, food. Like, I mean, it's something I'm sure everyone will agree on. But look, I guess you have to look at the positives and say, look, the IHRB are reaching out and looking for contributions to what they're trying to impose. But I'm not sure where it's going, Paddy, to be honest. Did you have a chance to look through it?
I had a quick flick through it, Emma. Yeah, I think it's coming from the right place. I think I'm not as staunch on it as Vincent. I do agree with Vincent's thing. We want to hear the results of big hitting, big scandals, big stuff like that. But I think when it comes to legally, that's very hard to release any of that. For me, it's looking like maybe there's a change in the guard of the old boys club, of the turf club, and somebody's in there and said, listen, we have to start doing something. Has it got any substance to it? I don't think so, but it's a start. It's something. They're engaging, that sort of way. The door is open, whether it be just this, but hopefully it's the sign of things to come in the future. But I'd like to know who designed it and who's come up with it and how is it going to be implemented. Like, is it going to be, because I'd have a fair idea what the license assessment is, because I was the assessor for a down in race. And, you know, we had a list of questions. So they're very basic questions of horse health. You know, they're, you know, how you'd feed in a paddock, how you'd feed a horse, you know, coming off grass, how you train a horse off grass, horse's temperature, bedding, you know, very, very simple stuff. But you would be surprised. There is people out there who have studs and stuff like that, and everyone does the work for them, and they couldn't tell you a horse's temperature, you know, a right temp. Look, it's a start. As I said, I'd really like someone in the IHRB to come out, I don't know, as a spokesperson, whether it be Nagle Cronin or someone like that, and come out and actually say what it is or what it is the start of. Is it just going to be a fluffy thing and we'll never hear of it again, and we'll say, oh, look, the IHRB have done this. They'll put that in their end of year report for the government, you know, and say we've interacted with public and yada, yada, yada. The more thing I would like to hear about, and I'm sure it's not legally binding or anything like that, is the Thurles closure. I mean, because I know the Maloney's quite well, that the IHRB went to them and said, and listen, unless you, out of your own pocket, get a watering system in Thurles, you can't race. And unless you, out of your own pocket, get a proper trot-up area for horses, you can't race. So the Maloney family, a privately owned racecourse, doing their best with a cracking racecourse that we all love, Thurles on a Thursday, it's an institution. We're basically given an ultimatum, and that family doesn't have the money to do that. But yet, now that there was a little bit of uproar, Willie Mullins, Henry Bromlett, they all want the track. All of a sudden, it's not needed. There's no watering system needed. It's just, no, don't worry about that. We'll drive on now. So that's stuff like that. I'd rather people come out and be honest about, rather than a fluffy survey about horse bedding.
Yeah, that was interesting. The whole like obviously when it came out first, kind of what you just mentioned there was kind of noted as maybe reasons for the closure, that they weren't able to, you know, astronomical costs of inputting water systems and stuff like that. So it kind of did make me question as well, like, why was it such a turnaround? You know, like obviously there was new measures put in by the IHRB that, you know, these things had to be in place coming into the next season, which wasn't plausible. But yeah, look, going back to, I suppose, the main topic there, Johnny, like my kind of question is I was reading Lynn Hillier did an interview in The Field kind of discussing it. And like, I'm just hoping now, maybe I'm reading too much into it. Like, she was saying that they're going to spend a few weeks going through the results of it and gathering data. Like, I mean, is this going to use up massive IHRB resources on gathering? Do people think that horses need to have clean bed and water? Like, it kind of just seems a bit, now maybe I'm reading a little bit too much into it, but that's kind of what it sounded like to me.
Yeah, I suppose, to be fair to the IHRB, it doesn't have anyone to challenge what we're saying here today. So I suppose that point needs to be made. You know, and the IHRB is under a lot of, I suppose, scrutiny at the moment. My understanding is there's a lot going on there. You know, I'm not sure how good morale is in the organisation generally. And again, the IHRB isn't here to say what's going on there. I did find, I suppose, what Vinny said today, that the lack of a reaction from the integrity body in relation to Straffan last year was quite strange, because it was one of the most shocking indictments of horse welfare that I've ever seen. I was absolutely horrified watching it, and because kind of Straffan was closed, the issue has kind of been forgotten about now, even though it obviously is still very much there. Just because the horses were no longer in training, that doesn't mean that it's not incumbent on those looking after integrity to kind of comment on it at the very least. And I think, you know, the IHRB has been a very, very archaic organisation for a long, long time. It didn't even have a presence on social media until relatively recently, and maybe it is dragging itself into the year 2025 now. But you know, I suppose, like Paddy says, this isn't coming from a bad place, this survey, but I wouldn't be reading too much into it. And in terms of resources, I think it's been said before, like the amount of races on stretches the IHRB's resources as it is. But I would feel, in relation to the IHRB, we need to watch the next kind of couple of months, maybe towards the end of the year, to see where things are going. And I really want to see a particular race in Wexford. I want to see a satisfactory conclusion to that.
Look, we all agree, I suppose, coming from the right place, this survey, but maybe not will have a huge effect down the line.
Just with the rehoming and stuff like that, Emma, like isn't Troella there? Races there. There's never anyone from the IHRB come down to race to check or look at the horses, see how they're looking, look at the medical records. Now everything is well above board. As I said, in race we had very little students in because of whatever's going on at the minute, the whole turnaround. But so when you've no students, your main focus is that them horses are absolutely healthy, 100% happy. And, that's, we could pull any horse out and race and you can take a picture of him 20 years old and we wouldn't mind it going on social media. But there's never any interaction. You've come down, Emma, and have a look at them, but there's never anyone come down and said, listen, this is a pathway. Here's Troella. I've rehomed 3 or 4 myself that were lovely horses that could go on to be little 80 meters or 80 centimeter show jumpers for young girls and stuff like that. But it's very hard. Like I had 40 horses there at one stage, and I'd say one owner came back to me within, there was one girl there who had a horse that she loved, and every week you got a phone call, how is he, and everything is okay. But other than that, I never had one other phone call ever. So, there's a massive, massive job to be done if they really want to do it.
I think that's very, very interesting, Emma. Yeah, and you know from yard as well, and I've probably been guilty of myself this as an owner when you've paid so much money to keep a moderate or troubled horse in training, and you're actually just happy when the trainer says, yeah, we'll just we'll take this horse out of training and you'll rehome, and you kind of do you do forget about him. But I have found from a couple of horses that I was involved in that were rehomed, following them on social media, there's massive scope there for for this to actually be a thing for racing to be very proud of, something that the greyhound industry I think has embraced as well in terms of rehoming. But owners should not get involved in owning horses if they feel that once the horse is surplus to their bank account or requirements that basically they've nothing to do with it anymore. Because if that's their attitude to horses, they shouldn't be involved in the first place. And I say that looking at myself in the past, that Straffan thing, if that Straffan documentary didn't colour your judgment on horses and where they should go after racing, you shouldn't be involved in the game.
Yeah, 100%. You have to, in fairness, HRI did bring in a new thing on their trainers registration system. You have to have every horse in every yard recorded on the HRI raw system now. And anytime a horse leaves a yard, you have to give them a address, a name, a number of where they went to. So you can see they are making improvements. Look, I know that's HRI, not the IHRB, but it's, I suppose, different branches of the same tree. But yeah, and Vincent kind of questioned, what is the IHRB's role in the rehoming? So look, whether or not that's something that the IHRB are going to place greater emphasis on, this is the responsibility of the trainer, maybe more so than the owner down the line. That's probably something that might come out of that survey, but we'll have to just wait and see, I suppose. But there definitely is improvements being made. But I'd echo your thoughts, Paddy. It can be quite difficult to find a suitable home for some horses. Look, I rehomed a horse myself there last summer. But you kind of have to wade through maybe what might be suitable and what mightn't be suitable. Every horse is different, and it'll be easy to rehome the horse who would be suitable for an 80 centimeter child going show jumping, but there'd be a few of them that might be a bit more difficult. But look, it's something that racing is definitely working on. There's been massive improvements in the last few years. I think anyone involved in the industry would have seen that. But look, we'll move on from that subject. There's one more we want to touch on before we do our horse to follow. Oisin Murphy's book was obviously launched there recently, and a really harrowing article in the Irish Times, which detailed kind of not just the contents of the book, but kind of gave us a bit of an insight into his mind and the troubles he's had. There's a few kind of striking lines from it about how he's dealt with his drinking and how he's being perceived on social media as maybe someone who likes to party, but most of his drinking was done at home. And one thing that stuck out in it for me was how he goes home nearly every day after the racing and Googles himself on social media, which he kind of just strikes me as someone who's so driven to be not just the best jockey, but like I feel like he really cares what the public think of him. And you know, he said it himself, like he's got serious troubles that he's trying to work on. But Johnny, you sent me the link for the article earlier on today. It was a great read, and you know, he spoke very openly in it.
Yeah, Dennis Walsh did the article, an interview with him sort of about the book coming out. And the book was obviously a year of Oisin Murphy. So that couldn't really, like, it wasn't going to document every time he went to the toilet, but it was going to document warts and all what the year was like for him. And Oisin was kind of, you know, he was honest about that. I was very, very pissed off, I have to say, with the whole car incident, just the way that was kind of handled, and the media's reaction around Oisin. It was almost as if nothing to see here. And I know there were legal ramifications, but for me, Oisin Murphy shouldn't have been interviewed about horse at that time when there was this massive elephant in the room, and he documents that in the piece. And I actually do. I've never met the man, and I do have massive sympathy for reading this piece, because, you know, people don't have a drink problem. People have a problem that they're trying to avoid by drinking. And that, if ever there were an example of that, that's Oisin Murphy. And you read the piece and it's just like, he's fundamentally, from my perspective, he's fundamentally deeply unhappy about something, or there's something in his life that he sounds like somebody who desperately needs a really strong therapy session, you know, to maybe there's some sort of childhood trauma or something that he's running away from. But the levels of alcohol abuse that he detailed is really, really shocking. And like you, Emma, I couldn't believe that he goes on Twitter looking for comments about him. Like, even from the perspective of being a journalist, if I followed this podcast or any of these podcasts, and I have in the past, I'm like, God, there was some nice comments there, but there was some criticism. If you're a jockey, like, the amount of idiots on social media who are going to call you out, like, literally haven't a clue what they're doing. No name, of course, most of the time either as well. Like, that's one thing Oisin should do. Just stop doing that for one thing, and actually realise that you are a gifted horseman. Like, for the problems that you have had, I'm not sure there's anyone better than you. You're so talented. But ultimately, it doesn't matter if you ride 200 Group 1s in a season if you're not happy. And I just implore, I don't know Oisin, but I would implore him to just go and I doubt whatever he's running away from is something that he can't deal with. But I'm like you, Emma. I read the piece. It was a brilliant piece, but I felt awfully sorry for him afterwards. And he wasn't making excuses for himself either. This idea of just going home and watching Braveheart twice, you know, drinking himself stupid, it was just like really, really sad. And I'm, you know, there are a couple of people that I'm sort of friendly with at the moment, that I'm worried about in terms of the direction they're taking in terms of abuse of this or that. And it's something that really, really hit me on Saturday when I read that piece, because he needs help big time.
Just on the topic of the, you know, like, obviously Oisin is an elite sportsman, like, and no sportsman is above criticism, but I think the social media, like the abuse you see jockeys getting at it, and I've seen Oisin do it himself. Like, he'd often reply and retweet and, you know, interact with people who are giving him that. But like, Paddy, I suppose you know a lot better than me firsthand, you know, the pressure that the public, I suppose, put jockeys under. Obviously Oisin is incredibly driven, but like, for any jockey, like, how hard is it to deal with that kind of abuse, I suppose, is the only way to put it.
Yeah, look, being a jockey is a tough gig, Emma. You're in the limelight, and being a sportsman in anything, you're in the limelight. And being very good at your job is going to put you more in the limelight than anything. So when Oisin goes home and Googles himself, sometimes that's what makes jockeys really good. He's so much attention to detail and what people think of him, and what, you know, everyone's opinion is. On the other side of it, on the flip side of it, that can be horrendous for someone who's in a bit of a bad spot. It just keeps you in that spot. It keeps you down in the hole. Look, I know with his drinking and stuff like that, I've been there myself many moons ago, and it's. And I'm not saying this lightly or anything, but if I was Oisin, I would go and get a test done to see if he doesn't have ADD or ADHD or something like that, because I see James McLean did it when he's figured out his son had a touch of it, and it turned out he had it. You know, he's a flawed human as well. Listen, there's a lot worse people on the street than Oisin Murphy in this world. And fair play to him for coming out with a book and stuff like that. But as I said, no one. He's trusting himself so much on a horse that he makes decisions instinctively, and they're right, and he gets it right more often than he gets it wrong. So when he's at home and he's had a drink and he says, "Do you know what? I'll have another one. I'll be fine." He believes it. He actually believes himself, and then all of a sudden, everything changes for him. Because the demon takes over then, and he's very good with the media, but I very much think he's got a great barrier. I'd say his walls are very, very thick, and he's brilliant at putting on a face, and he knows exactly what to say at the right times. But he only knows how to do that by practicing them masks, and he's only fooling himself, really, if he thinks he'll wake up one morning and he can just stop this and stop being that person. But listen, he's probably one of the best jockeys we've ever seen on a horse. He's exceptionally talented. Flawed, yes. Talent, yes. Show me a really, really good sportsman who's not flawed. Leicester, Fallon, down through the years, there wasn't as much social media. And I'm sure if there was, we'd have heard a lot more stories about them boys. I've spent time in Australia with Oisin when he was starting out first. He was over for a summer riding over there, and himself and Kieran Schumack, two great lads, two good lads, and two talented guys. But again, Kieran has had flaws too. He comes across very nice now, but he's had his troubles. And there isn't a jockey in the world who hasn't had a bad day. You have more bad days than you have good days. You're going to lose more than you win. You're not being paid like a premiership player, as glamorous as you think it is. It ain't that much money for the stress you're put under. You're getting chased by an ambulance around doing your job. So there is an element of you have to be a little bit mad. I'm sorry, but you do. But the real good ones are able to balance the madness with style and sophistication of being able to ride in a race and being calm under pressure. It's a bit like, I don't know, back in the day, the Formula One drivers, they were mental as well, Now they've come a long way, and there's a lot of money in the sport. So racing is still a long way behind big money sports when it comes to looking after their participants. But to be fair, as a jockey, you are self-employed, so it's your job to look after yourself. The racing boards can only do so much for you, but listen, it's great to see him to come out with a book.
Yeah, 100%. I'm actually going to the airport tonight. I'd say I might pick it up on my way down because just that article.
Leo Brackers.
No, not Leo Brackers. I'll leave that one in the shop. I'll be picking up Oisin's. I'd say just like he spoke so openly in the article. I'd say the book will be good reading. But look, I can't understand why people are abusing him on social media for his riding anyway. At least, I mean, he's riding at about 25% strike rate the last few weeks. Like like you said, he's one of the best. He's one of the best we've seen in a while. I'd say behind Ryan Moore, he's probably the best for me at the moment. But yeah, obviously brilliant jockey, and book will be a good read. But look, as we'll wrap it up, we've probably been going on for plenty now. We'll give a horse to follow before you finish though, and Johnny, I might go to you first if you have one.
Yeah, I think a lot of people like Vinny for his no nonsense approach to this podcast. I think he's been put in the halfpenny place by the one time rider of a horse over hurdles in Dingle today. Anyway, but great stuff. But I'm going to give my horse to follow. I was sort of thinking, would I give something that I've seen in Ireland over the last few days? But I'm actually going to go with Diamond Necklace in terms of a horse to follow. Like, what could she be? It's just brilliant. And I know as well, just in relation to Dundalk being called off Friday, a couple of people were on to me about that, and I know there was an issue in terms of staffing, in terms of trying to rearrange the meeting. But my understanding is it might be on next Tuesday, the 14th. So watch this space, because that was obviously I was disappointed, albeit understandable. It was called off in the night. But Diamond Necklace won't be running at Dundalk next year, which might be doing great things.
I'd be surprised if she was in Dundalk. No, yeah, it was a late cancellation there, wasn't it? There was high wind, and was our horses galloping beforehand or something, and a few of the riders didn't think it was safe. So pity for, I suppose, anyone who travelled up there, because it was obviously a really late cancellation, but there wasn't much they could do about it. But Paddy, anything catch your eye during the week that you think people should follow?
Yeah. I just want to mention about Dundalk being called off. We all think about the people there on the day and doing this and that, but I think, was it last year or the year before, we had a bad storm, and Leighton Aspel was stewarding in Dundalk, and a branch came down through his car and broke his arm on the way home, and he was lucky to survive. If it came over another foot, it'd have probably gone straight through his chest. So the things we don't think about on the windy day, it's getting home from the races and the safety. So I can always understand when they call it off for the wind. But the horse I want to follow is Glen Killen. How far was he going to win yesterday in Tipperary? Looks a gorgeous horse. Poor Brian Hayes had no real chance on him. Gave the horse a squeeze, the horse put down, and just unlucky the way his hands landed that his weight went back. But I think he's only 136 rater that was going to win on the bridle from a trip too short from. He could have a big winter. Harry Kelly, great trainer, really nice fella, and famous limestone lad, Solarina colours. I hope he goes on and does big things for them over the winter.
Yeah, it was bad up there. It was various. Yeah, hopefully he'll go on and get his head in front again for him. But I was with Johnny. I won't delay too long. I think Diamond Lekis was the standout for me over the weekend. I think I might have given her before. Was it after her maiden or after Leopard Sound as well? But if there's kind of maybe a 2-year-old superstar going into next year, I'd say she could be it. But thanks very much to Paddy and Johnny for all their contributions. I'll be back again next week with the same show again, with Paddy and Johnny on again. Vincent's away for a few weeks, so I hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like and subscribe, and bye for now.